things coming for you this fall?
We have anything from going to Rintoul's Pools and Spas. We're going to be going to Popeyes. We're actually going to be going to Treasure Hunt. There's so many things that businesses we're going to be seeing.
We look forward to seeing you all.
Come and join us on It's Happening Here on Rogers TV.
Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
Welcome to Wandering Grey Roots. I'm your host, Krista McKee. Have you ever been to Cuckoo Valley? Well, today we have a really nice treat. Barbara Pearn has met up with us, the local historian of the Eugenia and the Valley. Barbara is also one of the major movers and shakers of the gold rush, which is all part of the history that ties into Cuckoo Valley. So thank you, Barbara, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a treat so far. I was very fortunate in meeting Barbara through working at Grey Sauble Conservation. And you know every aspect of the history here, starting with Hogs Falls is where we have met. And we're actually going to work backwards, I believe, up through the Beaver River to the Boyne. Am I correct?
No, this is the Boyne River here.
Okay. And then
the Beaver River, it runs over Eugenia Falls.
Ah, so see, that's why Barbara's here with us. So tell us how Hogs Falls got its name.
Hogs Falls is named after William Hogg. And William Hogg came from Toronto. His family lived in the Hogs Hollow area, and his father and brother died, and William came up here to Ceylon, where he had a post office, and he was a bit of an entrepreneur. And he also had 11 children. So he decided to build a sawmill here. And at the time, he called it the Little Falls. It wasn't known after him until after it burned down. So he ran it here for about 10 years maybe. And I think it was 1888 when it burned down.
Wow. And it always seems to be the same history with all the mills in the area. They always were susceptible to fire.
Right, and it's because they're full of dust, and one little spark would set them on fire from all the machinery that was running in the mill, like oil and dust and sparks equals fire.
Yeah, so William left here and then went...
He went to Eugenia Falls because Eugenia Falls is bigger. And I think he thought that he could utilize the power in more productive ways. So rather than rebuild here, he decided to go to Eugenia Falls.
Wow, okay. Well, we are going to go on a road trip, and we're going to go to the next spot Barbara is going to take us. So the fall here is the tallest waterfall in the area.
Yes, it's taller than Niagara Falls.
This is taller than Niagara Falls.
Yes. You wouldn't think that from looking at it, but Niagara Falls is so wide. It just looks so big.
Right.
But yes, apparently this is higher than Niagara Falls. So Krista, before William Hogg came to Eugenia Falls, No one lived in this area at all. And people could hear the sound of rushing water at night from a great distance. And a lot of people thought that was coming from the little falls where William Hogg built his sawmill.
Right, where we just came from. Yeah.
Yes. So Sandy Brownlee was out hunting one day, and he heard the sound of the water falling, and he decided to follow that sound up the river, and he came to Eugenia Falls, and he was mesmerized by the amount of water that's flowing over the falls, because right now a lot of the water isn't flowing over the falls anymore. It's going to the power station. But at that time, the water stretched right across that cliff, and it was amazing. And he went back home and told his friend about it, and they both came back the next day and decided to climb down into the gorge, and they saw the glimmering rock behind the water. And they were so excited. They thought they had found gold. And somehow the word got out, and about 200 people came here to try to get gold out of the rocks. And they sent a runner down to Toronto with a sample, and it was about 2 weeks later that they found out that it was fool's gold.
So yeah, the laugh was on them.
Yes. So development started around this area because it was such a beautiful spot. And some of those hunters for gold stayed in this area because they liked it so much. So then later, William Hogg after 1888 came to this area to build another sawmill. And he was mesmerized by the power of Eugenia Falls and decided that he would build a power station. So then around 1905, he built the power station that we're going to look at in a few minutes, and powered Flesherton and Eugenia with lights.
My goodness.
And in those days, people didn't have as much power as they do now. And I believe, from what I understand, that the power was just generated at certain times of the day. It wasn't 24 hours, So a lot of the power went to power mills as well. So they ran during the day, and then people had maybe one light bulb, and they were charged based on how many lights they had in their home. So it was totally different than what we know of today.
Today, definitely.
And eventually, that power station went out of business. And it went out of business after William Hogg went to the city of Toronto to try to sell power to them for their streetcar service.
Oh.
And he lost that commission, but I think he was going to build a different power station at that time, because this one was not big enough to do the whole, Toronto streetcar service.
Right.
So he moved back to Toronto and died shortly after that, but he was about 78. Some people said that he was a broken man after he lost that commission, but we don't know that for sure.
Oh dear.
Then after that, William Hogg's son, and I believe there were two sons of his involved in the Georgian Bay Power Company, and their plan was to build a much bigger power station here. And so I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but we can go over to the power station and have a look at that before we start talking about the Georgian Bay Power Company.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go have a peek.
Okay.
Wow. So this is the building that.
Yes, this is the power station that William Hogg built.
Okay.
So it was around 1905, and I believe he first powered Eugenia and then Flesherton. There was like a big flume that came from the river, and it was dammed. So there was like first the dam, and then the flume brought water into the power station. And so they generated power here. And then Georgian Bay Power Company bought it. Their plan was to build the tunnel through the hill. And
The tunnel.
yeah,
So there was a tunnel here.
yes, there was a tunnel on the other side of the river, and it was completed, but it cost them so much money that they went bankrupt. They didn't have enough money to finish the whole project.
So sad. So then they just closed the tunnel.
They didn't close it. It was open for a few years, and people would come from miles around to go through it.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, it would be interesting, right?
And then they decided finally to blow it up.
Oh,
So,
my gosh.
yeah, for safety reasons. And I don't know when that was done, but the two arches at the end are still in place.
oh, nifty. Can we go have a peek at that?
Yep.
Wonderful. This is what we talked about
Yeah,
over
this,
at the falls.
this is the entrance to the tunnel, which was going to be part of a power generation project. So the inside was a track, and it was all lined with bricks.
Wow.
And there was going to be a wooden flume pipe going through it. And so it...
So they
Yeah,
were
it
going
was-
to use the original dam that
No,
William Hogg had built?
no.
No?
They were going to build a dam across the top of the falls somewhere and pipe the water through this tunnel down the hill into the valley to a power station there,
Wow.
which would have been a lot of work to do all that.
Right.
And they got the tunnel finished, but like I said before, they had to halt work on it because they ran out of money. And not only that, but at the time, the Ontario government decided that power generation should be something that everyone had access to. So they bought up all the rights to all the streams and rivers in Ontario so that no one else could generate power and make money from it. So that really shut them down for sure.
Wow. It would have.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness. So when they blew this up or closed it down, what was next?
So then the Ontario Hydro Commission bought up this property, and their plan was to generate power here from the falls, from the water that flows over the falls. And I think their interest got piqued from William Hogg trying to sell power to the city of Toronto.
Right. Right.
So Eugenia Power Station was built before Niagara Falls Power Station.
I didn't know that.
So a lot of what they did in Eugenia taught them a lot of lessons on how to build a power station, and they took those to Niagara Falls.
Interesting. And just kind of as a sidebar, they just opened up one of the hydro alleyways into Niagara Falls now that you can actually walk.
Oh, yes.
Walk that tunnel
Right.
and see the falls from the bottom. So it's interesting how this was kind of the blueprint for
Yes.
what they were doing. Interesting. Okay, so our next step will be from here.
To the dam.
Okay,
Okay.
let's go.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, and that's not my man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
I'm Dave Carr, in for David Shearman on Politically Speaking. Our next program is a mayoralty debate. Richard Thomas and Ian Boddy want to be mayor of Owen Sound for the next 4 years. We'll ask them questions on Politically Speaking on Rogers TV.
Man, this berm is huge.
I know, it is huge, and the dam itself is really long.
Okay, let's have a peek. So this entire lake is man-made,
Yep,
all to make hydro.
yep,
So it's full of cottages now, all around.
yes.
And then there's the causeway that cuts through the center.
It's at the south end of the lake.
South end. So we're on the north end.
Well, no.
I've lost my
This is kind of the lower third of the lake. Like it goes much further than you can really see. It's more like a splat shape. So it goes in and out.
right.
So
Like they've done it very nicely. Like look at the island they've left kind of in the center, or
well, they just filled it up. That's all they did was,
okay.
and they put in a total of 7 dams to flood this lake.
really.
So some areas were lower, so they built an earthen berm to hold the water in. And I believe that OPG inspects them every year to make sure they're still in good shape.
Right.
So this is basically dam number 1. And there's another dam just up north of here.
Around.
Dam number 2 is where the water goes into the flumes that go towards the power station.
So they're now generating enough power for all of
It just
Flesherton,
It
Owen
just
Sound, or it
goes-
just goes into the grid?
it just goes into the grid.
It goes into the grid.
Yeah.
So this was when they bought it from the Georgian Bay
Yes. Georgian Bay Power.
Power. The
And-
Ontario Commission bought this.
Yes. So they bought up all these farms. There were farms in this area, and they cleared out some of the houses, like I guess all the houses that were here, and moved them into Eugenia or wherever else they went. And yeah, so they basically started work on the dam in 1914, and they had horses, they had a steam shovel, and they had a train, a small train, which pulled dirt out of the area, and they had laid tracks on the ground for the train to run on.
My.
And over at the causeway, they had to raise the road up for so that the road was passable, and they were using like horses and wagons. And it's really amazing when you see, and like the causeway is pretty long. And
It is, yes.
And they raised it up quite a bit. So it's a lot of dirt falling around.
Well, yeah, where did all this fill go? Like that?
There was no fill. I mean, they didn't dig it out.
They
They
didn't.
dug out what was in front of the dam,
Right.
and that's it. The rest is just, you know, it's not very deep, maybe 10 feet deep, but most of it is just the way it was. It was like a little bit of a valley, and yeah,
Amazing.
there were trees. They didn't even cut the trees down. There are spots on the lake that you can see stumps. Some of the stumps are lower. And yeah, it was, they didn't expect people to have cottages on this lake, you know, when they made it.
Yep, yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. What else can I tell you that I haven't told you already?
Well, it would be interesting to go see the flumes. I'm thinking, because that's kind of like the end of the story. If we go to the hydro plant, that's kind of the full round story of Eugenia in a sense. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see those pictures though of the flumes above the ground. And you mentioned they were wooden, so
Yes.
that would have been a special talent in itself. Whoever
Yes.
made the flumes.
Yes, they don't know how to do that anymore. That's like
It's a lost trade.
yes,
It really is.
They
Yeah.
used iron, you know, bands around the wood. It's like making a barrel, kind of.
Yeah, I guess it would be. Yeah.
The original dam was cement, and so what happened was that in the 60s, the cement started to deteriorate.
No.
And so originally they were going to just shut down the power station. But there was an uproar because all the cottages were on the lake, and if they drained the water out, and they did let the water out at one point in the 60s. So the cottagers were very upset.
No doubt.
So they decided to cover the dam with dirt and rocks, and that's what you see now.
Oh, so we're actually there is a cement structure underneath this.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the cottagers like to have that optimum water level, you know?
Yes.
But giving a little bit of knowledge about dams, which is only enough to be dangerous, that you do have to do drawdown in the wintertime.
Yes.
You know, in order for snow melt and storm events, etc. And then put those stop logs back in. But you also have to be monitoring it for huge storm events, because when water level rises, and that typically that's what we've seen at Eugenia Falls, they have it fenced for a reason. And especially safety-wise, they don't want people standing on the edge of Eugenia Falls in case Ontario Hydro does decide to lift some of the stop logs to let excess water out. So
Yes.
definitely, if you don't know where you are, or I guess respect the falls, because you don't know what's behind you, what's going on.
Right.
And a lot of people that go to visit falls don't realize there's a dam here that's controlled by Ontario Hydro that could lift those stop logs at any point in time.
Yes, and they do that. That
Yes.
has happened where the logs have been taken out, and people have been down and heard the water coming, rushing,
Wow,
and gotten out.
They're lucky to be alive.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's go see the hydro plant and the flume that goes down the escarpment.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Great.
So this is our last stop. This is kind of where the water ends, in a sense, from Eugenia Lake. So the story on how it gets here is from Dam 2.
Dam 2 is where the opening is. It's a gate, basically, so they can open and close it as well. And so it enters the flume and comes in the flume and runs across the road, across County Road 13, under it, and into these pipes, these steel pipes, which carry it down into the power station and into the generators, the turbines.
So these steel flumes that you can see behind us are actually, they were replaced.
No, they weren't replaced. These are the original steel flumes.
Oh.
And they told me when we had the 100th anniversary that, because we had a tour of the power station, that they had put someone inside to inspect each flume and found that there was no wear at all on the inside of each of those pipes.
Amazing.
So in, say, I think it was the early 2000s, there was a break in the above these steel pipes. So the steel pipes go down the hill, and above that they were wood, but they were replaced with these plastic pipes, and they broke at one point, and mud from the ground up on the hill came down into the power station, basically filling it up almost, and across the road. It was quite a mess.
It would be a mess. I can't even imagine the amount of water before they could get things stopped.
Right,
Would be horrendous. Or even the amount of, I think it's cubic meters per second that they calculate water flow. I imagine it's huge.
Yes.
Huge.
But getting back to when the power station was open, it was smaller at that point. It was about half the size that it is now. And there were 2 generators inside. And in the 1920s, they added the rest of the building to it to add another generator. So it looks a bit different than it did originally.
Right, so it has really changed its kilowatts, I guess, that it's generating now. Wow. This has been an amazing journey. There's been a few places that I've never been to, like the last stop we were at, that the length of that berm's got to be a kilometer. That just...
I think it is.
Yeah, that's a huge berm. But thank you so much for spending the day with us today. It's steaming hot today. I think we picked the hottest day under the sun, definitely. But Barbara, you have been a busy lady. Your first book that you wrote, paperback, and you have now gone to a hardback book. So if people want to get in touch with you, because you are a lady of many talents, you are an artist, how can they get in touch with your webpage?
I have a website called barbarapearn.com.
Okay.
And it's easy to find, and you can contact me there. I don't have anything about my books on that site, but people can contact me there and ask about how they can get a book.
Wonderful, yes. And take a few minutes to check out Barbara Pearn's webpage, because she's also an amazing painter and has a whole range of paintings on barns that you have captured history on canvas, which is fabulous as well. So thank you very much for joining us, Barb, and thank you for watching this episode of Wandering Grey Bruce. And we got to remember to thank the guy behind the camera, Daryl. Have a good day.
And thank you, Krista.
You're welcome.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.